There can only be one world champion, and tomorrow we're going to war. What's good, guys? Welcome back to Behind the Dugouts for your match preview of Chelsea versus Paris Saint-Germain in the Club World Cup final. And we've done it again. We are here. We're in another major final, playing on the world stage against a very strong PSG side. Current Champions League winners, and it's definitely split the fan base up a little bit for this fixture. We've got half of the fan base a bit more conservative, a bit worried, especially after what PSG have done to Real Madrid the other night and how they've played the entirety of the season. And then you've got the other half of the fan base that are quietly confident, saying it with their chest and expecting us to go toe to toe with PSG tomorrow. And I would say that I'm leaning on the side of, I'm confident. I'm expecting us to go toe to toe and to cause PSG some issues. And I'll give you my reasoning for that in a bit. But first, let's take a look at PSG themselves. Now, for me, they epitomize adaptability. They are able to change the style of play mid game, prior to the game, depending on the opposition. If they come up against a team that plays in a low block, they've got the ability to, press and win that ball, and they've got the quality in their players to play those intricate passes in behind to unlock those styles of defenses. They don't normally play with a traditional number 9. They play with a false 9 in Dembele, and because of this, the front three are able to interchange positions all the time throughout the match, which makes it incredibly difficult for the opposition defenders to mark those players. But then it also drags players away to create space in behind, and they do this effortlessly. And then if they come up against a team that has a bit more possession, is going to come into their face and go toe to toe with them in an attacking sense, they have the defensive structure, they've got the experience to play in a little bit of a lower block, to press quickly, and to play more of a counter attacking style of football. And they can do this on the fly. They can adapt this in mid game, which it's quite difficult for opposition managers to manage this. you know Managers will always prepare for the game prior. They'll watch fixtures that they would have played previously. I guarantee the Chelsea bosses would, and players would have watched the Madrid game to get some tips on how not to defend against PSG. But you can only prepare so much, and sometimes you prepare to a point, and when you actually get to the day of the game, they may have not made the same selection that you thought they were going to make. They may not play the exact same style of football that you expected them to play, and then you have to adapt. And some managers aren't able to. But I find that Luis Enrique has instilled such an adaptability and such a cohesion in this team, the way that all the players understand their positions and understand what they expect from each other, that he can just adapt and change mid game flawlessly. And it has made this PSG team so difficult to beat. And that is why, they've won the Champions League. That is why they are, favourites to win this Club World Cup, because of this reason. And they are definitely bringing a new era of football. We've had the Pep Guardiola era with, possession based football. And I feel like it's slightly shifting. And this PSG style, I think we might see more teams start to adapt this philosophy of being able to interchange and just change stylistically throughout the game to basically confuse the opponents. But even so, with the threats that they pose, with the players that they have in terms of Cavaciello, Dembele, Desiree Doué, Bradley Barcola, the midfield three with Vitinha, Neves, they are quality across. And if you look at the centre back in Marquinhos, across the board they've got quality players. However, I feel Chelsea can go toe to toe with them, not only stylistically, but with the players that we have. And the reason I think this is Chelsea, throughout my entirety of watching them, when it gets to these sort of major finals, you're talking about Champions League, 2012, talking Champions League 2021, when we get to these big finals and, quarters, semis, all the way through, we are always underdogs. We are never expected to win. We're always expected to lose. I mean, the fan base outside of Chelsea, every other fan is expecting us to lose this. We've got no chance whatsoever, according to anyone else. And I think that's more on the side as they just really don't want us to win it. And that's what we thrive on. We thrive on being the underdogs. We thrive on not being expected to win, because we're going into this game now with no pressure whatsoever. All the pressure is on PSG, and pressure can make, can make teams crack, and no pressure can make teams step up. We're going into this now not expected to win, but what I've seen over the last few days from press conferences, players speaking, there is a fire, there is a mentality, and football is not just a battle on the pitch, it's a battle psychologically, in the minds before we've even stepped onto the field, before the referee has even blown that whistle. And Chelsea have started that already. The mind games that the coach in Maresca and, players likes of Reece James and Levi Colwill, and what they've said, coming out saying, we're here to win. There was a question in the press conference that Maresca got saying that are Chelsea prepared to suffer because they're not going to control the ball. And he's basically turned around and told, who said that? Who's told you that? And I love that because it shows that Maresca is going into this with a game plan, and he's not going to just sit back and allow PSG to have this ball. We're going to go toe to toe with them, and we're going to go and we're going to play our football. And that's what you've got to do. And, I look at a few teams that have come up against PSG and Inter Milan, who played obviously them in the Champions League final, and they tried to go more defensive and sit back and allow PSG to have control of the ball and attack them, and they got demolished. The team, when I watched Bayern Munich play them in the Club World Cup, and they went at them, they got in their faces, they were going toe to toe with them, and they caused PSG quite a considerable amount of danger. The problem that Bayern Munich had is they were terrible on the day of finishing. They couldn't hit a barn door. They had 2 offside goals, which doesn't help. Psychologically that can cause an effect. But their finishing was just terrible on the day, and that obviously PSG, you can't give them too many opportunities, otherwise they will put you down, and that's what happened. But I feel that the best way to play against PSG is to go at them, to go toe to toe with them, and I feel by the comments that's been made, that is what is going to happen. And it's going to start, started with the psychological part, and then it's going to, how they are going to prepare the game. What is the correct starting 11 that Maresca should pick for this fixture, or what he's going to, go with, because there's no time to experiment. We've established that now, especially now this is the last game, and I don't think he's going to experiment with anything. So for me, he's going to go with the strongest possible lineup. So with that being said, let's take a look at the potential starting 11 that I think Maresca will go with for this fixture. Right, now to start things off with the position that gives us the most anxiety in this fixture, and that is the goalkeeper in Robert Sanchez. Now I have to be fair to him. Over, towards the back end of the season and in the Club World Cup, he has been playing pretty well. He has, saved us in important moments, but he does have this thing in him that he just forgets he's a footballer, and he just loses concentration. He stops focusing on the game, and he just has these moments of ridiculous errors, in terms of his distribution, or if he needs to come and claim the ball. And he seems to have these sort of every other game. That's one thing I can say he's consistent in. And for this one, he cannot afford to, to have any lapses in concentration. He needs to be focused on it from minute 1 all the way to the end of the game, and not give away these silly chances. Because if you give anything away to this PSG attack, they are going to take that chance. So for me, Sanchez has just got to focus on being present in the game and just fully concentrated throughout. Going into the right back position. Now, for me, obviously Malo Gusto has played pretty well the last 2 fixtures. He's, looking a little bit better. He's looking sharper. He's getting involved in attack and creating things. However, we have to have Reece James on the pitch for this fixture. His experience, his leadership, he's played in these big fixtures before. He was part of that Champions League winning team under Tuchel. For me, we cannot have the captain not on this pitch. We're going to need him. He's the driving force of that back line. He is what's going to lead us, hopefully, on to victory. Next to him, this was quite a tough one. It was obviously between Trevor and Tosin. Now, I've gone with Trevor. I think Chalobah is a better option in this fixture. Again, he's played these types of games, these high level, everything's on the line kind of fixtures. He's been in and around that environment before. You've got the chemistry between 2 Cobham boys, and Reece James and Chalobah, both out of Cobham, both played together, both were in that Champions League side. So I feel that he just doesn't do anything wrong, Trevor. You know, he's played under multiple different managers. He's been outcasted by the clubs so many times, and every time he's been brought back in, managers put him in, and he just does the job. He rarely makes a mistake. He is solid, and I think he's the right centre back to go with to partner the returning Levi Colwell in this fixture. Again, Levi Colwell is a player that I've actually been pretty impressed with in terms of his trajectory. You know, there was parts of times, especially under Poch, where he lacked a little. He just looked like he lacked something. He was getting beaten pretty easy in 1v1 situations. He was picking up silly. He always looked like he just wanted to fight with everyone, rather than play ball. But one thing he does have, his ability to pick out passes is sublime. I think he's probably the best centre back we have that can play balls in over the top, that can find these players in these spaces. And over this season, and especially the last 6 months, he's just taken a step up. He sounds more confident. He sounds like a leader. His performances on the pitch are improving game after game, and he is the best centre back that we have at this club currently. And for me, he is a vital key component in how this defense functions. Alongside, next to him, is the most important player in this back line, and that is Mark Cucurella. I mean, I don't know where this back line would be without him. He's everywhere, whether he's up, in the attacking half, in the defensive half. He mops up everything. He's good on the ball. He understands the system. He, knows how to invert. He's making goal line clearances and turning into a goalkeeper. He's just everywhere. And for me, Mark Cucurella is one of those players that, even when we were going through the ruts, under Maresca, and we were struggling, he was still a player that was consistently being good. He was consistently playing well, and he was a player that we could turn to in, a time where we were struggling. And he's just continued that form, into the Club World Cup. He's continued playing well, and he's just a superb left back and fits this team like a glove. Into the pivot now. Luckily, Moises Caicedo is fit and is training and will be ready for this fixture, which had me a little bit worried in the last game, because ideally, in my idea such a situation, I would like a midfield three of Enzo, Caicedo, and Lavia. But unfortunately, Lavia is not going to be fit. He is still injured, so he's not going to be ready for this game for me. So that being said, the pivot is going to be Enzo and Caicedo, another two players that have been crucial in how this team has sort of changed, how the mentality's changed, how the football has changed. And Enzo, obviously being a vice captain, he takes on that leadership role. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He's constantly getting into battles, getting into, winning those second balls. He's picking up, like we've said, more assists, more goals. And he's now developed a partnership with Caicedo, and they just work so synchronized together. They know how each other need to play. They know how each other need to move. There's a constant balance between their play, where we're not getting overrun, as we used to, especially under the Pochettino era. And this area of the pitch, the midfield, is going to be where this game is won and lost tomorrow. They've got an incredibly talented, midfield three in, Vitinha, Neves, and Ruiz. So Enzo and Caicedo, and it's kind of why I wanted Lavia in there as a third option, so we can do, bank of three versus their three. But it's going to be very important for us to control that midfield, because in turn we will nullify PSG's attack and, limit their attacking opportunities that they could potentially create. Moving into the forward line. Now, this was an interesting one. There's two ways I think this could go. I'm going to give you what I think Maresca's going to go with, as then I will give you my preferred attacking options. So on the left, I think he's going to go with Pedro Neto, as he did in the last fixture. Pedro Neto, another very, very important player for us. He has been Mr. Consistent in this tournament, performing at the highest level in every game. He's increased in terms of output, in terms of, his attacking threat since the back end of the season, coming into this Club World Cup, and he's gone, from strength to strength in each game, and he's continuing to do so. And I think this is partly because of the team spirit at the moment. I think it's at quite a high level, which is just pushing all the players on, which is great to see. But I also think this is partly on himself. I think he knows that there are players coming in that are going to go after his position, one being Esteval. And obviously, if he's going to switch over to the left on occasion, you've got Jamie Gittins, who's recently signed. So, with those added additions and that added potential, threat to his position, he is now having to elevate his game to continue to maintain and be a starter. And he's doing that, superbly at the moment. Every game, he's giving great output. He's producing crosses. He's producing attacking threat. He's creating opportunities to score for others, and it's going to be vital that he continues that reign of form and performs at the level that he's been performing for the entirety of the tournament. And I do think he will do that. Alongside him in the 10 is Cole Palmer, and I think Cole Palmer, he's showing glimpses of his old self. In the last game, especially in the second half, he definitely picked it up. He was toying with those defenders in the second half. It was beautiful to watch. As I said, in my review of that fixture, he just has this way of controlling his body, controlling his movement that the defenders cannot read. It's quite unorthodox in the way that he moves, and he's bringing that confidence back. And he was trying these janky runs against Fluminense, where he's doing the 180 turns, he's cutting across them, 3 or 4 times to basically spin them around and make him dizzy. He only does that when he's confident. He hasn't done that for a long time. He's trying these chipped little passes. He's shooting from outside the box. Again, he scored a great goal against Palmeiras from the edge of the box, just a curler into the bottom corner. So he's showing glimpses of his old self, and we're going to need him in this fixture. And I think this is a good fixture for him to play in. Reason being, a lot of teams that we've played, of recent, have played on a low block, and they've compacted the midfield and defense together, so not allow space for the creative players like Cole Palmer to maneuver, to provide a bit of magic. And he gets frustrated, and when he gets frustrated, he gets a little bit off his game. And if he can't find those pockets of space, or he's being man marked, which this happened pretty much the majority of the Premier League season, he's basically not on the pitch. I mean, he hardly gets on the ball. So when we come up against a team like PSG, who are not going to sit back, they're going to come at us. They're going to go and play their style of football. They're going to leave spaces behind these little pockets that Palmer will pick up, and this is going to suit him. And I think we'll probably see tomorrow him get on the ball quite a lot and try and create things quite often, because he's going to have that luxury of a little bit extra space than he would normally have when playing against a team that plays in a lower block. On the right hand side, I feel he's going to go with an unchanged 3, and he's going to put Nkunku on there. And it's quite a debate with Nkunku, really, because I personally feel that he shouldn't be with the squad based on the fact that he will be going this summer. And it makes more sense to have given that opportunity to players that are going to be part of the squad moving forward, the likes of Paez. I know he's going on loan to Strasbourg, but the idea is for him to be part of the squad moving forward. And if we know that Christopher Nkunku is going to leave, it didn't really make much sense for him to be part of the squad and part of this tournament. However, he has played pretty well, and I'd have to say in the last game, the attacking line looked really fluid. The movement, they were working off each other. They were interchanging positions. Sometimes Nkunku will be in the middle and Palmer out on the right, and sometimes Nkunku will be out on the left and Neto through the middle, Palmer out on the right. And it was just constantly ever changing in that game, which is something that is very similar with the PSG team. Their front line do interchange positionally, so it could be quite useful to us. Do I feel that he should be in this big fixture? Not really. But I do feel this is what Maresca is going to go with. And based on his performances in the last game against Palmeiras, I do think if he does start, he's going to give it his all, as he has done in the last few games, and has actually looked like an attacking threat and has actually created some opportunities for us. I just hope he's not the one that ends up on the end of these chances, because his finishing, again, is quite lackluster. But it is what it is. If he's on the pitch, I'm not going to moan about it too much. But there are, I would rather have seen a João Pedro on the left, with Pedro Neto being on the right, and then Liam Delap up front. But I don't think Maresca is going to go with this option. I think going in the number 9 position, I think he's going to put João Pedro. As I said, I think he's going to keep the front line exactly the same as he did in the previous match. I know Liam Delap now is back from suspension, but I just feel with what João Pedro did in the number 9 position against Fluminense in the last game, it's almost like you shoot yourself in the foot if you take him out of that position and put him on the wing when we know how well he did in the front line, playing as that lone number 9 in the last fixture. But it's a tough one. Again, you can easily drop Liam Delap in the number 9, put João Pedro on the left. I don't think Nicholas Jackson starts. I'd be very surprised if he will come on in this game. However, if João Pedro does start up front and Liam Delap and Jackson are on the bench, I think Liam Delap will come on before Jackson. That's just how I see it. Again, in my ranking of them, I see João Pedro as first, Liam Delap second, with Nicholas Jackson, behind them as the third choice, especially now, with there being quite a few rumours about his potential sale and that he may be looking for a move himself. But look, guys, this is what I think Maresca will go with. As I mentioned, I would prefer a Liam Delap up front with the João Pedro on the left, but I just feel that Maresca is going to go with an unchanged forward line that played pretty well against the Fluminense side in the last fixture. But I'd love to know what you think. Who do you think should get the start? What would be your starting 11 in this fixture? Drop a comment below. But look, guys, it's one game left, and I'm confident that Chelsea have enough in the squad, in the way that we are playing at the moment. I know form sort of goes out the window when it comes to the final, because, on the day, it's anybody's game. But I do feel we have enough in the squad to get us over the line in this fixture. And I've had a feeling since sort of the round of 16, when we got the draw and the performances we've had since then, that this was our tournament, that it just looked destined for us to win this, and I stand by that. I think this is our tournament. Score prediction wise, I'm going to go with a 3-2 victory. I think there's going to be goals in this fixture. Both teams are going to go for it, and they're going to produce a very good attacking display. I just feel that this is going to be that type of fixture. I do think this is going to go into extra time as well. So that's my prediction. I think 3-2 Chelsea win, and we will be world champions. But for now, guys, that's all from me. Now, if you are enjoying this content, please hit that like button, drop a comment below. Feedback is greatly appreciated, and hopefully the next time that we see each other, it will be as world champions. Take care of yourselves, guys. Peace.